Ernest Miller Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway was born on July 21, 1899, at 8:00 a.m. in Oak Park, Chicago, Illinois. He was an American author and journalist who is considered one of the most famous novelists of the 20th century. Ernest Hemingway was honored with many awards throughout his life. He was awarded the Silver Medal of Valor during World War I. In 1953, he won the Pulitzer Prize for his book, The Old Man and the Sea. And in 1954, The Old Man and the Sea won Hemingway the Nobel Prize for Literature. In 2001, Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises and A Farewell to Arms were listed in the Library of Modern America's 100 Best English Language Novels of the 20th Century. Hemingway had a complicated emotional life and was married 4 times. He is a representative figure of the American lost generation writers. His works show confusion and hesitation about life, the world, and society. Ernest Hemingway is known as the spiritual monument of the American nation and is the founder of the journalistic novel. His writing style has always been known as literary tough guy. Ernest Hemingway's works mark the formation of his unique creative style and occupy an important position in the history of American literature and even in the history of world literature. Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea is a book that combines conviction, will, tenacity, courage, and strength, and it gives one a thorough understanding of what an unbreakable and indestructible spiritual force really looks like. The novel centers on an elderly Cuban fisherman who fights a huge marlin in the Gulf Stream a long way offshore. It perfectly embodies the author's idea that you can destroy him all you want, but you just can't beat him. Ernest Hemingway was an extremely enterprising tough guy. He tried to eat earthworms and lizards, lit up in a Mexican bullfight, ventured into the primeval forests of Africa, and went to war in both world wars. On July 2, 1961, Hemingway committed suicide with a shotgun at his home in Ketchum, Idaho. Of Hemingway's suicide, as President John F. Kennedy's message of condolence put it, few Americans have had a greater impact on the feelings and attitudes of the American people than Ernest Hemingway. The New York Times commented, Ernest Hemingway himself and his characters have influenced an entire generation, if not generations, of Americans who have vied to emulate him and the characters of his works, and he is the embodiment of the American spirit. Ernest Hemingway was a truly hard man who never conceded defeat to fate. The real hardness in life is not the person who is richer and more powerful than others, but the person who takes pleasure in wrestling with destiny. Today, many people in this world are getting softer and softer in their spine, and it is easier and easier for them to bow down in front of money and power just because he has succumbed, and he no longer believes in his own strength, but in the power of money and power. People in this life, always undergoing the test of life. Some people cannot keep their own heart, let themselves become very soft, so soft to be driven forward by life. Some people are very hard, fight with all their strength, but also to keep the only and precious self. How much society needs a true tough guy, spirit and true toughness. Let Ernest Hemingway give us the strength to be truly tough today. Be regretting your own mistakes and strive not to repeat. This is true repentance. But man is not made for defeat. A man can be destroyed but not defeated. All things truly wicked start from innocence. There is no friend as loyal as a book. Fear of death increases in exact proportion to increase in wealth. Once we have a war, there is only one thing to do. It must be one for defeat, brings worse things than any that can ever happen in war. The man who has begun to live more seriously within begins to live more simply without. Courage is grace under pressure. The world breaks everyone, and afterwards many are stronger at the broken places. There is nothing noble in being superior to some other man. The true nobility is in being superior to your prey's self. In the affairs of life or of business, it is not intellect that tells so much as character, not brains so much as heart, not genius so much as self-control, patience, and discipline, regulated by judgment. By then, I knew that everything good and bad left an emptiness when it stopped, but if it was bad, the emptiness filled up by itself. If it was good, you could only fill it by finding something better. It is awfully easy to be hard-boiled about everything in the daytime, but at night it is another. The most painful thing is losing yourself in the process of loving someone too much and forgetting that you are special too. But I try not to borrow. First you borrow, then you beg. I have always believed that people who begin to live more seriously on the inside will also begin to live more plainly on the outside. A man can be destroyed, but he cannot be defeated. You can knock me down, but you will never defeat me. To knock me down is for my body to fall, but you can never defeat my heart. This is not the time to think about what's missing. It's time to think about what you can do with what's available. The world is such a beautiful place. It's worth fighting for. I only agree with the second half of the sentence. Your program should be based on what must be accomplished, not what might be accomplished. It is impossible for a humble man to know a scoundrel. Happiness, as you know, is a flowing banquet. Divine talent is like winning a lottery ticket out of 1,000,000. If you're not born with it, it doesn't matter how much you drill and train. Marriage without true love is the beginning of one's fall. Life is like a bullfight. Either you beat the bull, or the bull picks you off. There's nothing in life that can't be overcome if you don't care about the gains and losses. You are the god of everything, and if you want to conquer the world, you have to conquer yourself first. The majesty of the iceberg's movement is due to the fact that only 1/8 of him is above water. The underwater portion is 7/8 of the entire iceberg. Life is always hard, but it's something we have to take on. It took us 2 years to learn to talk, but it took us 60 years to learn to shut up. Most of the time, the more we talk, the more distant we get from each other, and the more conflicts we have. The best training for a writer, an unhappy childhood. You run from one place to another, but you are still you. You can't escape from inside yourself. I go to great lengths for my favorite things, so I can be happy as I am. People who love each other shouldn't fight, for there are only 2 of them, and against them is the whole world. Whenever they are divided, the world conquers them. As soon as you have love, you want to do something for the other person. You want to sacrifice yourself. You want to serve. The thought of my life fading so quickly, when I wasn't really alive, was too much for me to bear, and I couldn't manage to sleep peacefully. Different youth, the same confusion. However, youth grows and confusion dissipates. After the night, the sun rises as usual. In a sense, everything kills each other. Fishing is killing me, but it's feeding me at the same time. Everything kills something else, just in different ways. I've been observing the war for a long time, and I don't see anything so-called sacred honorable. The so-called sacrifice, that's like the slaughterhouse in Chicago. Only here the slaughtered meat is not canned, but buried on the spot. The world strikes down everyone, and afterward, many stand up in the place of heartbreak. You don't know how hard things are until you go through them. You know that spring never goes away, just as you know that the river will flow again when it freezes and when the bleak winds and dry rains drive it away. It's like a young man dying for no reason at all. If you don't rule others, you will only be ruled by them. The young should have the composure of the old, and the old should have the spirit of the young. We have to get used to the fact that we are standing at the intersection of our lives, and there is no stoplight. Men and women, though they love each other, want to be alone from time to time, and the moment they are apart, they are bound to attract suspicion from each other. In the end, the corrosive effect of bickering always destroys the feelings they harbor together, demanding too much, and thus draining everything. It's silly for people not to get their hopes up. It's extremely easy to be unemotional about anything during the day, but at night it's a different story. If he lived by lies, he should try to die by them. Despair is a sin. I sympathize with all those who don't want to go to bed. I sympathize with all those who want a bright light at night. Courage is grace under pressure. If you take too long to do anything and start too late, you don't expect people to stay there. People scatter. All people are really one, and someone else's misfortune is your misfortune. Don't think that the death knell tolls for anyone. It tolls for you. 2 years to learn to talk. A lifetime to learn to shut up. If you know or don't know, don't say much. If your heart is in turmoil, speak slowly. If you don't have anything to say, don't say anything at all. The joy of a wise man is the rarest thing I know. We can't eliminate fear. We can only restrain it. Don't think about what you don't have. Now is not the time. Think about the things you have and how you can put them to good use. If you stop complaining and asking for things you can't even get, you'll enjoy a great life. Nothing can break him, because nothing can hurt him if he doesn't care. You know spring will always come, just as you know the river will flow again when it freezes. You can only live one day at a time, and only that day counts. As long as it was still dark, it was still today, and by tomorrow, it would be another day. Of all the truths he had learned in his life, this one was the most important. Things that go too well and are too good always don't last. Paranoia is a strange thing. A paranoid person must absolutely believe that he is right, and restraining oneself and maintaining correct thinking is the best way to promote this self-righteous and upright view. It's always especially cold before dawn. There's a ruling class in a country that's stupid, doesn't know anything, and never will. That's how wars are fought. I don't know why, but older people wake up early, probably because they want to have a little more time. There are 1,000 ways for a coward to die, but only one for a warrior. Enjoying life means making the best use of your wealth and knowing when you have it. An egg broken from the outside is food. Broken from the inside is life. A person's strength from the outside is pressure, and the bursting forth from within is growth. The thing about good luck is that it comes dressed up in so many ways that no one recognizes it. Never go out on a trip with someone you don't love. Don't get into any gimmicks to meet any kind of cliché. God did not create man to fail. How I wish I had died when I loved. How I wish I had died when I loved only her. Every man is not an island. One must be the strongest island in the world before one can be part of the continent. As long as a person lives, no matter how worthless, he should not lose his dignity and demeanor as a human being.